In this lecture, we're going to talk about configuration management and automation. Let's say you want to build a new web server. First, you need to spin up a machine. This can be a physical server or a virtual machine using the hypervisor or a container. In some cases, provisioning might include manual steps if you are an enterprise that has its own procedures to request servers. Later in this course, I will show you how you can quickly provision virtual machines on your own physical machine using Vagrant. If you can, use cloud. This provisioning process then becomes really easy because most cloud providers have an API exposed. If you are using cloud, you can fully automate provisioning. Once you have your machine spun up, you can add services necessary to run our software. This can be, for instance, web server software like Apache and PHP or IIS and .NET. In this case, we're talking about automation and configuration management. All those services will have their unique configuration files that we need to maintain. Then, on top of this, you can deploy your application. So what is configuration management? Let's take a look at a broader definition. Configuration management, or CM, is a systems engineering process for establishing and maintaining consistency of a product's performance, functional and physical attributes with requirements, design and operational information throughout its life. In our context, it's maintaining consistency of our software configuration. We are going to provision some servers, we're going to install software on it in an automated way, and then we need to maintain the consistency of that software configuration. That is what configuration management is. Let's go back to our web server example. Apache has a configuration file where we need to define the websites that are running on the server, whether we want to use SSL and all those things. We might have one web server or we might have 100 web servers. For every server, we need to maintain the configuration. Why automation? If we have hundreds of servers that we have to maintain, our infrastructure becomes unmanageable. We need to automate it. There's too much change that we have to manage. We have often outdated documentation. If you don't automate, there will be no easy way to recreate our environment. This is solved if we automate our environment and we are going to make use of configuration management. Some tools that can help us accomplishing this are Chef, Puppet, Ansible, and SaltStack. Let's talk about the benefits. Automation tools will help us deliver and maintain software on our servers as code. Our infrastructure literally becomes code, which means it becomes more maintainable. We can put it in a version control, like Git, and it will become version controlled. We can also test our infrastructure. We can spin up a new server, install the necessary software, and see if everything goes as planned. And lastly, we can work on the infrastructure as a team. It makes us collaborative. I can put my infrastructure code in Git, and if at some point a colleague of mine finds a bug, he can then easily change a few lines and commit the newly code into the repository himself. We can also share code. We only have to write the code for a web server once, because afterwards we can reuse it. Let me go over some guidelines with you. First, if possible, try to use infrastructure as a service. This can be with OpenStack if you do on-site deployments or by adopting cloud. The reason is that you have a programmable provisioning process, so it will be more efficient to quickly run a machine and tear it down when it's not necessary anymore. It's also better manageable this way. And of course, it makes your infrastructure a lot simpler. If you are an ops guy, be a developer. Use version control, preferably Git. Also, make sure you understand your infrastructure. You cannot automate what you do not understand. Make sure you use automated testing before deploying. This ties back to the continuous delivery process. If you are doing continuous delivery very well, application deployment will also become more predictable.